Morning. Oh, my mic's wrong. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Morning, everyone. I am reset from yesterday. Most important thing to do from a frustrating trading day is not let it carry into the next day, because that will F you long term for sure. I'm sure once we get into the thick of things, if some trade shows up that feels a little unsure, just because the market again is kind of funky. Um, well, I'm sure some of those feelings might come up again, but we'll just deal with it when we get there. I'm drunk. I don't know if I can tell you the last time I was drunk. Like actual, I drink very little when I do, and when I do at all, I'll be a little buzzed. But actual drunk, I don't know, not very often. Maybe once a year, if that. Especially in the week, I just like don't drink in the week at all. Um, I mean, I just don't like the taste of alcohol. Like, I just never liked beer. Obviously, in college, I partied a lot, like everyone usually does. But just, I don't know. The taste of beer just never caught on. And so now I just don't really drink. Um, and then, especially in the week, I'll just never even think about it because I don't want it to affect my sleep and affects my, a lot of what I do in the week is very focused on um, keeping me at peak performance in terms of energy, sleeping well. If I'm if trading was stressful or other work things are stressful, I'm really diligent and focused on um, making sure I can recover. Because to me, I'm trying to be at a high performance every single day. And so that involves being very fluid with what I do. Like even with workouts, like right now, especially with streaming, I'm not training as much physically because I don't want to overdo it and get myself too tired because I know that'll affect my trading. And I've got races and stuff coming up over the summer that I want to train for, but obviously I have to make some sacrifices because to me, trading and streaming is the priority. Yesterday turned out green for you. Awesome. Love to hear it. Yesterday, after looking at yesterday afterwards, it was crazy. I only looked at it like later in the day when it had done this bottom. Like I think I looked in around here, but just seeing this move and then crazy bottom and then of course we just rip it all back up is crazy. Even on a 5 minute, that move's huge. This market is just that's why I'm open to taking trades any direction. I think the market can reverse any of these moves it's doing. Are there better trades during the summer? Um, Sometimes people say volatility dries up during the summer. I think it can sometimes, but you know, it's one of those things. Every year is different, and so I'm not gonna. I don't have to me. I don't. I feel like I don't have definitive. I think the moves that I look for in the morning can still be totally happening because it's on a much smaller chart, you know. And I think as time goes on, as more people start trading and day trading, as it just becomes more normalized, like the volume just goes up consistently over time. The cast is not clear. If you're There is a vertical stream only, and that's mainly for people on the phone. If you are on that and you want the horizontal version, just go to my profile, my YouTube channel, and you'll find the main horizontal stream. So overnight, I mean, big bottom yesterday, kind of a decent sell off this morning. To me, it looks like we could be bouncing, like the S&P 500 is recovering this move down. Um, the question is, does it recover and we continue lower? You know, I guess looking at a zoom out a little, 30-minute chart doesn't really do anything extra. You know, kind of a 60-minute chart just to reduce some of the noise. We're kind of in this right now. I mean, do we have, like, it kind of almost looks like we kind of have something like this going on. Super rough, like, kind of channel. Maybe it's more like this, but either way, like, we retested yesterday's high, and so I think the question is the market going to test that and we do a big double top and go down? Or do we just start kind of going sideways? Do we bounce here and retest it again and continue higher, or do a little sell off? I think we're definitely at kind of an inflection point in the market, big picture. So being patient, letting that kind of play out, I think is important. There was news this morning. What was it? PPI. We got crude oil inventories. That hasn't really been doing anything for anyone looking at oil. Generally, that is making it uh, just spike initially, you know, chop and then spike, and then it kind of continues what it was doing. But there's no real news like after the market opens. So I would assume actually is this spike we had was from that news. It happened at 8:30, big spike, and now we're reversing. So actually thinking about this yesterday, we had that exact same thing. Is yesterday we had pre-market news. It spiked up after the news essentially, and then reversed that. And then from there, we actually kind of sold off. And so I'm wondering, the Nasdaq acted the exact same. I'm wondering if it's we spike, we reverse, and then we actually do this, just because it looks like we're kind of doing the opposite. So that's definitely something I might be thinking about today, because the market's been very repetitive recently. You just have to be trying to spot what is it repeating. You know, here on the Nasdaq, spiked from the news, recovered, spiked actually again, and then went into this big downtrend. So definitely gonna think about that and see how it plays out. Oil's not really doing anything other than just slowly grind higher in this uptrend. Oil on a daily chart, you know, to me is just in this kind of wedge, you know, something like this. But either way, it's just kind of staying at this price until something big in the Middle East happens. I'm not really, or oil gets just to be start moving quickly. I'm not really looking at it. with intent. Why don't I trade US 30? I just like focusing on these two. I've added in the Dow before and with the Russell, and it just overcomplicates things unnecessarily. I felt, um, a lot of the times adding more actually doesn't help you. Taking away, I think, is better. Um, and a lot of the times the moves are going to be roughly the same. Live, I'm a different person. Hopefully, it's a good thing. I haven't really traded Forex before. I've looked into it a little bit. But to me, futures for starting an account made a lot more sense. The spreads in Forex were kind of funky, especially for small account sizes. I thought it really hindered you as a small account. I think for me, like anyone starting out, the biggest thing is to, you come in thinking that you got to learn all these things, learn all these indicators. The more patterns you learn, the better it's going to be. And in reality, actually, what you need to do is simplify things because that's what's going to, trading's already so complicated. You haven't even got into the emotional side of trading, which adds a whole nother crazy amount of variables to deal with. If you watch the stream long enough, you'll start to realize that. Um, and so, that's kind of the hard part is dealing with so many variables. And so reducing how many you have, I think is important. And one way you can do that is reducing the complexity of your strategy. Head and shoulders on a 15-minute. Um, I'm not sure which direction you're talking about. I don't think maybe you're seeing this. To me, that's not a head and shoulders because we're already kind of at the highs. Um, it could be, but that's just, I like to use head and shoulders as like, okay, it's bottomed and now it's going up versus this is like we've come up and it's more of just like a stab lower. I think this, in terms of similarity and pattern, yeah, this is a great stab lower that just got completely rejected yesterday, and we went to all-time highs. This is a massive for anyone like big picture going short. That's a massive fake lower. Like looking on a daily chart, um, that's a huge wick, and so that's a big. That's the first time. During yesterday when this was all the way at the lows, this would have looked crazy bearish just because we haven't had a candle look like that this whole time. I guess we had one here. And so maybe you could consider, well, we are starting to slow down. We could be in a situation like this where we're just going to be in this kind of chop range for a while before the market decides to go a direction. So that's kind of what I would be thinking there, but I do think it's definitely a good bottoming pattern in terms of just it's a strong failure to go lower. You've been paper trading for 3 months and you'd like to start a prop firm. I would suggest not start a prop firm and just transition to that like real money as small as you can. Like if you're doing futures, you can start with a really small amount because prop firms, I've talked about it quite a lot while streaming, but prop firms can really eat you alive in terms of their fees if you're not able to pass quickly. Maybe give it a go, give it a month, and then if it doesn't work out and you're spending a lot of money, you just got to be very careful of how much in fees that you're starting with or you're paying to essentially demo trade. Um, you can start probably trading futures, the micro futures. You can probably start with as little as $100 to $200. 500 would probably give you a little more cushion, but you can probably be risking about 20. I think the other day I looked, you could probably risk $20 per trade. And hopefully you're probably going to lose some of that, obviously. But hopefully is like you're going a little bit break even. And you're able to learn and focus on the emotional side of things and that part of the process. That's the real big important part. You at 250 on an NinjaTrader? Yeah, I mean, I think you can totally do that. Now you got to realize, like, oh, if you go on a loss streak, you're probably going to get in trouble. But if you went on a loss streak on a prop firm account, you'd be losing money too, essentially with resets and stuff. I look a bit tired. Just still waking up. My eyes do feel a little tired. I actually slept really well last night. It's actually warm enough I can be in a t-shirt. I don't think that's happened yet. Interesting on a 5 minute. This looks like a good spike lower that has a solid fair value gap to push higher. I think this opening is going to be very interesting with how the market just opens based on all this action we have. You've noticed that a lot of other YouTubers are promoting prop firms. I mean, I think they make a lot of sense, but I think even when they first started coming out like years ago, they always kind of gave me I don't know, a nasty feeling. Just the way they're set up. And so I just don't think they make sense. Now, in all transparency, the platform I do use, I do have a partnership with. So I do have a financial incentive to promote them over a prop firm. But I've been doing that for years before I even had that. So nothing's really changed, I would say. I've always kind of had that outlook. We had this very similar move yesterday morning. Looking here. Yeah, massive recovery overnight. Yeah, I mean, the market closed here. I mean, there was a massive recovery yesterday. And then from there, it kind of doubled the recovery. And then now we're kind of having a spike lower from pre-market news. And so now we're getting close to the open and the market's starting to chop because it's starting to slow this move down. The ES is actually still moving up. Risking a little bit on prop firms, it's enough to get put skin in the game. Yeah, I mean, I think if you do it in a responsible way and don't let the fees and the greed of, oh, I can unlock a $150,000 account just suck you along in terms of wanting to just keep doing it. And realize, oh, look back months later and you were spending like $200 or $300 a month in fees because of all the resets and then even the hard part that you got to realize too is once you get to the payout, because you're not used to the intensity of having a ton of money on the line, because all of a sudden now you have $100,000 account and you could make $5,000 on this trade. that's going to mess you up. You're going to get greedy. You're going to get fearful of like, oh, this specific trade has to work out. Otherwise, I blow the account I've worked, months to unlock. And so I think it creates bad habits. Well, okay, just to kind of run through everything again. Welcome everyone this morning. Just kind of still ramping things up. If you guys could actually hit that like button, I actually don't say that very often. We try and push this stream. It's been kind of crazy. The amount of people watching every day has just been consistently going up. It definitely puts. I thought I was getting used to it, and then it just continuously climbs, and the pressure just gets more and more. So it's pretty crazy. It's awesome, but it's like, it just adds intensity to trading. Especially like yesterday, took a loss. It that was with me for a couple hours, and it's harder to reset because then taking a loss like that, it's on a frustrating market. It's hard in front of really thousands of people, and the doubt starts to set in. But you got to realize it's just one trade. It's just one trade. I've been doing this a long time. I have confidence in my reads. Not everything's going to work out. So to look at the big picture, still in this big uptrend. I think we're still in a big choppy uptrend that has volatility potential to go either direction. I think we saw that very clearly the last couple days. And so yesterday we had a big sell-off and huge recovery overnight. To actually look at this, what are we? We're not opening that high. We're pretty much flat since the overnight on the NASDAQ. And then the SPY is pretty much flat too. But that's because this morning's pre-market sell-off from the news. But in reality, looking at futures, you can see we had this massive move up overnight. This is probably a 2% move at least, which is crazy. I think the market was down. Actually, maybe it's more because I think the market was down 2% yesterday at this area, at least the Qs, or the NASDAQ. And so it was a crazy move yesterday. But pretty much just looking at this double bottom we got this morning, the SP 500 at previous highs, NASDAQ very similar. Looking at kind of this area and the all-time highs here too. And I think big picture, this does to me feel like a big fake lower. But as this thing goes up, like that's a huge recovery. So I think here the question is this going to bounce, or is it kind of like yesterday? We kind of had a fake higher and then it sold off hard. So I think it could go either way in a lot of ways. Oil is still just really high at $102 a barrel. It's just in this continuous, decently strong uptrend here. So that's pretty much what I'm seeing this morning. Oil has not been very correlated recently. Only when it really starts to get crazy does it do that. So I won't really be watching that much. And then on a 5-minute, we had this fair value gap down. Now we have this fair value gap here. I think the ES could kind of go either direction right at the open. Same with the NASDAQ. NASDAQ looks like it could pop up a little bit. Also, we could say that there's this little support level right here from this swing. Might be testing that. The ES is, I think the question too is it coming up to this spot where it opened? So that's kind of what I'm looking for this morning. I want to see, ideally, how we test these levels and look for trades off of those, as usual. Does it make a difference that both of the falls come in back of news and not really prompted the recovery? Trying to think about exactly what you're saying. So here the news popped and it sold off and then it recovered. Here it actually popped up from the news and then sold off. But you could say, overall the market reaction for the news was this sell off. It remains to be seen kind of how the market reacts to this news today, since it hasn't really opened yet. We've got 2 minutes, really 60 seconds until things open. I don't really try and read into that too much because it could go either way, we could have just recovered this because the big picture was strong enough, and the market is just going to continue higher from here. The overall market is just so strong right now. Oil is going to stay super news dependent until the visit to China is complete. Yeah, I don't really know much about that in terms of how long he's going to be there and what he's doing exactly. I mean, oil is going to stay super news dependent and elevated until things in the Middle East and everything get figured out, and that's going to be, if it was going to be fast, it would have been figured out by now. And it hasn't. So, it's been, looking at oil here, I mean, it's been a solid since March, and it's basically been 2 months. And so to me, it's like it's not happening fast. Market's open now. Stream only has 16 likes, I appreciate all 16. It's not the end of the world. Big spike here, right at the open. It's like a 6-point candle. Definitely the volatility has been reduced some of the time. I mean, I guess granted this candle here is still, from that news, is still 10 points. I think the question is, what does this spike do to this morning? Is this kind of like a final push lower, or big picture, is this all the recovery we had, and the overall market does not like these CPI numbers? Just to bring them up again. It was, you can look here and say, oh, well, it was way higher than the forecast. And so it's up a lot from what theoretically was expected. But that's why it's like I don't try and look at news too much, because you can have very good news and the market can sell off because the market's priced in a higher expectation. And so that's the hard part about trying to, I don't know that much about macroeconomics, and looking at CPI or, unemployment numbers and all that. Like, to me, I just like, that's why I don't really have any indicators. I literally just look at the price, and the price is going to tell me how the market is reacting. To me, that's a simpler way of doing it versus trying to, look at it and say, oh, well, it's a good news release. Like things are good, especially like you can even think about this with stocks, right? Like, oh, the earnings report is really good, but all of a sudden it's selling off. That doesn't make sense, right? But it's because the market priced in better expectations, or it priced in a good one, but even better technically. And so, in some sense, based on the price where it is, it's actually valued too high based on what is released. So that's why news is very difficult and confusing. I think it trips up a lot of people initially. Um, they'll trade, they'll do news earnings trades, especially with options, betting that it's going to go higher. The news release will be good, and then all of a sudden the stock will sell off. Same exact thing happens with the indexes. Where did I learn how to read candlesticks and everything? Staring at them all day, every day. Um, I mean, I definitely watched like YouTube, like years ago. I watched YouTube videos. I literally took courses and stuff like that. Um, and I did exactly what pretty much everyone else does. And then over time, kind of figured out my own style, figured out what worked for me. And here I am. Yes, it's definitely having more of a sell off this morning. Bring our checklist down. And now, for anyone new to my strategy, is I literally just look for reversal trades in the morning. I don't overcomplicate things. To me, being extremely simple made it way easier. Otherwise, and focusing on one specific setup a day and letting the market come to me, waiting for it to fit, kind of what I'm looking for, and then taking a trade versus trying to react and catch every different move the market has. Because trying to be that fluid, I can't do it. I don't think a lot of people can do that. You think that's what you should do. And, I'm sure there's some amazing traders out there that can do that, but I can't do that. The main time frame I'm looking at is a 1 minute chart. I pretty much only look at the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. And the market, I would say the market these past like 2 months has been so tricky. I think we're definitely shifting a little. I think a month ago, like the first month of the Middle East um, situation, the market was extremely news driven. It would just literally, it would just sit there, wait for news. News would pop, it would go crazy, and then it would kind of sit there again, which was untradeable to me. Like there was a couple spots, but it was so tricky because of that. It would always sit there Friday into the weekend. The market would just sit there because the risk of some crazy news happening over the weekend and it's spiking and opening at a crazy price was very common. And now I feel like we're moving away up from that a little bit. There hasn't been as many um, huge spikes from news. We don't have crazy gaps up anymore, but we're still very volatile. We can have an intraday, we can have big spikes from maybe some random tweet popping up. Um, and now I think, especially since the macroeconomic side of things is starting to come into play in terms of oil being a very high price for, the last couple months here, that's starting to affect things. And so I think that's what we're starting to see with some of these macroeconomic numbers coming in. It's causing a lot of volatility. Like yesterday, we had some numbers pop. The market did a big sell off. And then I don't know reason why we reversed higher and gave it all the way back up and tested all-time highs, but that happened. And so now today we have the exact very similar thing happening. We had news pop, pre-market we had news, and now we're having another crazy spike. And so in terms of trading, like there's a lot of really good, like this week has been extremely funky. Monday was very volatile. Monday on the NASDAQ had crazy moves like this, but in reality, we were just in a choppy range mostly. Yesterday, we had a big spike up. To me, I thought it was actually going to go long from there. We were at a nice support and we just cratered for the rest of the day. And then here today, to me, I think this definitely looks like it's a lower high, big picture. But I could totally see this turning into a head and shoulders. If this spike lower kind of fails, we could totally do this. And so I think that's what I would be looking for this morning. If this actually fails, we kind of find support here. We set something up, and we can look to kind of take a long here. But because of how funky things are this week, I think I'll probably be looking at doing half size because of that. And I think yesterday, I think the only mistake I did, I think I should have gone half size, because it was much more of a bigger picture play that I was taking versus seeing just a nice clean whip in the morning to reverse. And so that's kind of an adjustment I'm looking at there with taking some of the spots where I can see the big picture is pushing a direction, wanting to capture that, but realizing that's more of a B setup, not really like my bread and butter that I want to be full size on. You learned a lot from the live streams, focusing on the process, not the money. I think that's the hardest thing to do when you first start out. And it's still hard to do, especially if you go on, I think at any point when you go on a loss streak and you're at like your main size, whatever size that is, you're going to focus on the money a little bit. But just, yeah, I think the way you speak about trading is really important. I think talking out loud about what you're seeing and what you're feeling really helps stop some FOMO and stuff like that. This looks so similar to yesterday. If we kind of set up a bottom here, I will follow my strategy and take it, but there's going to be fear in me thinking that we're just going to do what we did yesterday. NASDAQ pops up. I jump in the ES on a head and shoulders here. It pops up a little, but then the big picture reverses. And it's hard because I see the potential to go both directions here. And so I don't think there's enough bearish signal to not take a long. Because this could easily, the market recently, like yesterday, broke and sold off. But I would say every time before that, we bottom and we go up. Granted, things to be shifting right now. We're definitely seeing kind of something different this week. And so I'll just have to kind of see how this plays out. I would like to see something like this. And then I would jump in kind of long here. It makes kind of this head and shoulders. NASDAQ is setting up this head and shoulders kind of right now. It doesn't have as much of a gap. But to me, that's definitely, that's too short of a pullback here. But in terms of checklist, I would say reversal zone. I think we definitely have an unhealthy move if you think about this. Looking at a 5-minute for the fair value gap. The NASDAQ has already kind of reversed it somewhat here. But definitely on the ES, we have that. I think next is like looking to see a trend break. We might just spike here and go into a downwards channel like this. It might be just turn into a spike and trend. So I want to keep that in mind. Yesterday I said more money can be made in the NASDAQ versus the ES. Sometimes. It can be either or. Based on how I trade, if I'm looking to trade based on the swings and I put my stop based on the swings, once you're in the trade, you know, the NASDAQ could go like this and the ES could go like this. And so risk reward wise, you know, they're the same. To where like 2x, 3x, and the NASDAQ, you could be up 3x on one trade, and the ES, you could be almost at 2. Or it could be flipped. You know, this could be the ES up here, and you could be up more, and the NASDAQ is struggling. And so that's why I try not to flip flop too much, because again, it just adds another variable of trying to juggle them. And then when you're wrong, sometimes it's frustrating. And so it's very easy to try and it does look like the ES came up to this area and sold off. You know, you don't want to it's easy to get sucked into things in trading of trying to min max too much. And that can even be entry, you know, like a very easy way to see is like, oh, if I jump in here, you know, right here is 2x. But if I jump in on a limit order down here, that's 3x. And so sometimes you'll try and, you know, you'll try and enter in and wait for a pullback. And the risk of that is the market it doesn't do that and it leaves you. And so, you know, I don't do that anymore. I would every now and then I would be greedy and try and do that because obviously the risk reward looks way better if this is 3x versus 2x. But, you know, I try and look at it of I'm just trying to capture the move. You know, I don't want to try and fiddle with that too much, essentially. If the general trend is short, why am I looking for a long? Because I think it could flip at any second. I mean, look at yesterday. Yesterday had a big sell off and then it just flipped. I think this market has potential to just flip. And to me, shorting here, you're shorting at a support zone after it's already made 2 big moves lower. I totally see the potential for it to just continue to rip. It looks like it might do that. But to me, that's just not my strategy, you know? I'm not looking to capture every move. If today is just going to be a massive downtrend day, I will be sitting here. You don't want to be trying to take every move in the market unless it's a part of your strategy. Because otherwise, you're just going to be chasing constantly and it's not going to be good. In hindsight, you know, if this sells off, it'll be great. And markets like this don't happen very often, where you know the market opens up like just literally just yesterday was the first time we've had a massive sell off. Today maybe that'll happen, but if you were trying to bet on a massive sell off, you would have got burned this whole ride up. There's little sell offs here, but something like this, We haven't seen that since, you could say, maybe back here. And so that's why, I think yesterday I got burned because of that, because the market shifted. And it's shifting right now to maybe be more volatile, more downside. And so you might not know, when you're trading, you're focusing on the market in a certain style and a certain trend. And my focus was, okay, I'm trying to buy as many longs as I can. I'll look for some shorts in key areas because I think they're still possible. The market is reversing when it gets really overextended. But anytime we come to kind of a support, that's what I want to buy. And so yesterday we were at a support. It doesn't look as good on the NASDAQ, actually. On the ES, though, we were at a support yesterday. And I was thinking, okay, more than likely we push higher. And then it ripped. And so when the market shifts modes, every couple of weeks or every couple of months, and you're not gonna catch the first move when it shifts modes unless you just get lucky. And so the important thing you want to do is realize, okay, things are starting to shift. I may have got burned on that first one. Now how do I adjust and not get burned again and potentially look to profit from the new norm? And so that's the hardest thing in trading, which I think burns a lot of people, is they start trading and whatever the market current conditions is, it works for them, and then it shifts and they're not able to shift gears. And that's a huge thing of trading. You have to be able to shift gears and know, okay, the market is really good right now for my strategy. I need to press hard. And now we're shifting out of that and the market's not good for my strategy. I have to be patient and wait until I have better understanding of what's going on. And right now we just have, this is just kind of crazy volatility at the moment. I actually wonder what the VIX is doing. The VIX is definitely, we've been pretty low for the last month, since kind of the initial sell-off from oil. But we're definitely up over the last couple days. But it's nothing crazy if you look at the last month. So I don't think there's anything crazy to think about there. But it's also probably down a little bit today because we recovered all of yesterday. I wonder if yesterday midday it was kind of at, yesterday midday it was kind of high at like 19-ish. So if we sell off today, it'll probably spike up again, and we'll see kind of what happens there. VIX is weird because if things are not volatile now, then I don't know when they are. Yeah, the VIX really only spikes when there's massive downwards volatility on a daily. And if you look at a daily chart of, let's say, the S&P 500 here, swap into a daily chart, where there's no volatility if you look at it. Like, we're seeing volatility intraday, but if you just look at the big picture, this thing is just slowly grinding higher. You will only see the VIX really spike if we do this. And I could see, I think if we're going to have a pullback on a daily, I think we definitely would pull back to somewhere down here. We had this spike chop for a while, and then it kind of got going again. I think a healthy move would be somewhere down here. Retest where this breakout started happening, somewhere like here. And that's a 150, 200 point drop on the ES. That's gonna, however it happens, if it happens over a daily candle or 2 days, there's gonna be a big spike in the VIX. NASDAQ on a daily is even more bullish. But it's, yesterday was a pretty big candlestick to the downside. It recovered it, but I think if it's definitely showing that, okay, this uptrend we were in last week could be coming to an end. We could be starting to even just go sideways, or we could actually be starting this pullback, and the Nasdaq would make sense if it pulled down to here, big picture wise. And so if we're going to shift to a volatile downtrend now, that's very different than what we've been in for the last few weeks. And so it might be just observing things for a couple days to see what things are doing. Because you don't want to, when you don't really understand what's going on, you're more likely to FOMO into something and make an impulsive decision because you don't want to miss out. Because that missing out comes from lack of confidence and understanding. And when you're confident, to take the extremes, when, the market is like selling off extremely hard in an extremely continuous downtrend, you have strong confidence that you're not going to buy. The move is to sell. And so you're not going to do that. But when the market's all over the place and you could see it going either direction, it's going to increase your impulsivity and your likelihood to do something because you don't want to miss out on the potential move. NASDAQ looks like it did come down here to this overnight little bottom that the market made. This could just be a fake lower. In terms of a head and shoulders, this is pretty solid. If the ES comes here, does a little shoulder right here, I will definitely look at jumping in long up here. Again, I think I'll do half size just because of how this market is right now. It's a little unsuredness. You have FOMO like crazy. I mean, when the volatility increases like this, FOMO increases because you think, oh, there's even more money to be made because the moves are that much bigger. I've never heard of the rocket scooter program. I don't really use a lot of other indicators. I've tried volume. A lot of people try and get me to use volume. I'm just adjusting this trend line because technically it could still be in play here. NASDAQ is the exact same. We're still just testing this trend line. And until that breaks, we don't have a trend break. Am I on every morning? Yeah, I live stream every morning now. I've only been doing it for like a month and a half, but I plan to consistently do it going forwards. I want to show what it's like trading, but the main focus of these live streams for me is to help you guys. Is to just talk through the realities, and I think talk through, I think if you really are trying to get into trading, no one really on YouTube talks about the mental side. They do some, even on my channel. I have a ton of tutorials. But in terms of just how the algorithm doesn't really like videos on mental side, you know, they don't do very well, and so I think a lot of people just don't do them. But obviously, I think to actually succeed, you have to focus on the mental side. I don't really like how this is acting. I would have liked it to punch, break this, and then come back. I think if it does this right here, I'm not going to feel as confident about it. Actually, I didn't realize I was looking at the NASDAQ there. I like the ES here a little bit more, but I don't think I'll get in long right here. I would want to see it break this downtrend a little bit more. And again, I think I'm going to go half size if I do enter. Hopefully a little more than $400 worth of risk. That seems too tiny. I might just double contract entry. As long as it's below 1,000, I think that's small enough size for me. But if the Nasdaq's just going to continuously sell off here, I'm not going to jump in on the S&P 500. Kind of at 10 o'clock. I mean, looking at this on a 5-minute, I think the question here is, are we gonna? There's this kind of spot over here, a more recent zone. I'm actually just gonna color this a different color so it's kind of easy to tell. Are we just gonna come up, test this swing low here, and then sell off? We kind of did it a tiny bit right here, but I think this is where that more potential happens. The Nasdaq did that perfectly right here, and so I think if this just continues, then this is where it's gonna sell off, if it's going to sell off. But the ES does look like it's starting to have a trend break here. The unhealthy move is this guy from the open that we had. If you look at a fair value gap on a 5-minute, big fair value gap here. Fair value gaps, if the reversal happens, the reversal will most likely give this whole move back up. And so that's what I would be looking. I would be looking to at least get up to here. And then the thought is, okay, if it's a big enough trend and we pick up, will we get higher up here? And I can get something like 2 or 3x. I'm just going to delete this downtrend. I think the trend is kind of starting to break here. NASDAQ, though, it looks like it's just making a lower high. And so that's why I'm not really jumping in yet. I'm not really sold on this. I think stop just down. I'm not going to put my stop all the way down here. To me, I think either it's going to go up here, maybe a little bit of a pullback, but it's going to start going up. And if it goes all the way down here, we're probably having a trending day, you know? I don't think having to stop all the way down here makes sense. I think if it's going to go and break this, I think it's probably just going to continue lower. And I might as well reduce my stop and have a better risk reward for when I'm right. If I am. I'm seeing this kind of break here. Definitely at that spot where taking a stab is starting to make sense. I think if the NASDAQ was looking a little stronger, I would be in right now. But the NASDAQ looks like it's not wanting to go up. And if the NASDAQ's not going to go up, this is just going to do this. And the bigger picture trend is going to continue. You know, I might want to wait to see it break this previous swing. I'm not sold on this reversing up yet. It's there. The possibility is there. The potential there for a good move up is here. the market conditions, I think, are there in terms of it can go either direction. But the big picture is, things are kind of back and forth. But the main setup here is we've had a sell-off, we're at a reversal zone. There's kind of a head and shoulders here that I like. A lot of the times I would have entered in here if I was more confident, but because of the trend is kind of funky, we might just grind up. And, even if I jump in up here, I'm still okay with that. I think the stop is still fine down here. Because right now, I think it's just because it's not really showing good momentum. It could kind of just do anything. Kind of look at a 5-minute to get out of the noise. NASDAQ on a 5-minute doesn't look great. ES is kind of there, but if you look at it, we're still testing this zone here. And so I don't like the fact that it could just test this and rip lower. And as soon as NASDAQ gets moving, it's just going to pull it back. So here, that's exactly what I'm thinking. But I think if this pullback recovers, that's a good sign. But if the NASDAQ's just going to do this, I don't like that. It's hard because it's very, very close. Like we pretty much have a trend break and a reversal pattern. I'm just waiting for confirmation, and the confirmation is honestly, I think I'd like to see a pullback. Something like getting out of this. The NASDAQ maybe breaking because it's technically still hasn't broken. The NASDAQ hasn't broken this downtrend. And with the market downwards momentum, is this could just pick up all of a sudden and just retest the lows here. And if the NASDAQ made a double bottom here and the S&P then made a pullback like this, more of a bigger right shoulder, that would look great. To me, that would be a very good setup, and I would really like that. Versus right now, it's a lot of like, oh, maybe, or should I? There's a lot. It's just not very clear. And I don't want to enter in when I'm getting conflicting signals. So I'm just going to wait until this little choppiness breaks. Because if I enter in now, to me, it's just it's a gamble. A little higher low on a 5-minute chart would be great. And the reversals have been happening later recently. Been taking longer, more time to set up. So that could be coming into play too. Oil is ripping. The oil is definitely on a 5-minute chart. It's definitely spiking up here, kind of out of this channel that it's been in. And if it does have a little pullback like this, that could help push the S&P 500 up, but they're not super correlated right now, so I'm not too worried about what oil is doing. Unless it really starts to move. To me, it's not really moving yet. NASDAQ is making that push lower. And so the ES is still kind of struggling. The ES I like the strength of the ES that it is showing. But again, I want it to break this choppiness. I don't want to jump in on this. And if it just all of a sudden rockets up, that's okay. I don't want to enter in. I'm okay. That's the risk I take by not entering in yet. But I think the likelihood of us pulling back here is higher. Because the NASDAQ is selling off here. I'm just watching it on another screen, which is why I'm not pulling it up as much. Live streams are super helpful. Happy to hear that. I mean, I think just talking through the daily, it's every day the market's different, and so I think being able to have, people talk through that is very helpful as a beginner, I would assume. Because YouTube videos make it look a lot easier than it is. Because there's infinite possibilities in the market, and getting used to that just takes a ton of time. NASDAQ is making that stab lower. I think the question is, it's definitely coming to this area and bouncing off of where this bottom basically happened. And so the question is this a higher low? And if that's the case, the ES might start to break out here. It's not really doing as much of a pullback as I would like, but because the NASDAQ is, I definitely like that more. And so I'll definitely think about getting long if this starts to trend up. But to try and like reset and just look at things in a unbiased way, I mean, the ES is still kind of doing this potentially. We're definitely at this point where that could happen. We're definitely kind of unsure in terms of it showing different directions. And the NASDAQ is just kind of, I mean, to me, it almost looks like it bounced here and now it's selling off. There is very high chance of this just continuing lower. And I think we're at that. That's why I'm not in yet, because I think it's at that spot where it's really making that decision, or it's kind of leveling off, and so that's where you can kind of get baited in. And so I don't want to get baited in. I want to see this make an actual bottom. If it breaks this high here on the NASDAQ, I think that's a good signal for it to continue higher. And again, I think if the ES makes a pullback to here, that to me is a better attempt to continue lower, and it fails, and then I jump in long here. That to me would be much better of a setup. This chop fest, I don't want to just enter in on a chop fest though. What do I think of the training content NinjaTrader offers beginners? Honestly, I have no idea. I haven't looked at their stuff. Big dump coming in 2 minutes. Totally could happen. Trying to be patient. Chop fest. But it's starting to show bottoming signs. The market has been starting to move more like 10:15, 10:30 a lot of the time. And if this breaks out here, I think that looks really good. NASDAQ is breaking out. I want to see how in the NASDAQ this candlestick is reacted to. You know, does it break out and just completely crater right away? Like this is just a fake higher. Same with the ES. You know, is it just a fake higher? And I got to realize that I'm kind of entering in terms of the swing. I'd be entering in kind of far in the move in terms of if it just moves this. So I want to be aware of that in terms of my risk reward. And I might tighten my stop a little. But also understanding that actually I would like my stop to be down here. Just with the idea that, you know, I'm going to go small size on this. 700. NASDAQ is looking pretty good. It's kind of breaking that downtrend. On a 5-minute, the ES looks like it's pretty good too. NASDAQ looks like it's making a double bottom on the 5-minute here. But again, I am doing small size because I think we could totally just spike up here and sell off. But I see the potential for us to go long. And so I'm going to put an order in above this high. If we jump above this high, and I put my stop all the way down here. Because it's choppy, I want to give it some wiggle room. If we pop up here, pull back, and then continue. And this is definitely much more of a bigger picture play of it giving this back up. And I'm not really, we don't have it, it's not my bread and butter in terms of a very clean flush that's happening quickly and then reversing quickly. The fact that we kind of sat here and chopped for a while on both of the markets means it's a little bit slower of a play. And you know, I'm pretty small size. If we shoot up here and I get a small size win, I'm okay with that. In this market, you know, it's been very tricky right now and things are kind of adjusting. And so I think it's better to take small stabs because it helps you kind of understand what's going on. So then when you kind of get a good understanding, you can increase the size and really pop things up. So I'm in on a trade now. And I'm just going to wait and see if we kind of just cruise higher from here. I think it'll be a slow, if it works out, it'll be slow. And could this be just a little bait higher and we reverse from this chop? Could totally happen. We could just be in this chop range. That's why I'm small size here with a kind of a wider stop, is because I see a great, this is a nice head and shoulders pattern. I think to give this move back up and potentially get things going higher. But I think there's a lot of other reasons that we could just sit here and chop or continue the trend down. And so that's why I'm doing smaller size, because if, you know, let's say it's 50-50, right? That it goes up here and I make 1 to 2x. And the other 50 is if I lose this. The math theoretically works out in my favor. And so that's, you know, you want to think like that. You don't want to think, oh, because I'm not sure if this move is going to work, I shouldn't get in. You know, it's not that this trade has to work out. It's that I think the odds of us going one direction or the other are, you know, let's say 50-50. And so if we go up, I'll make more than I lose. Why not TP after fair value gap? No, this would definitely, up here would definitely be the first spot I would look at in trailing my stop up and getting out, you know? Because I think if this pushes up here, this is definitely the first resistance level of where it could reverse. But the idea is, okay, I want to see how it hits up here. And then if it's going to break, I want to hold on. And so I would like to see, you know, the potential I think is to go up here. And if that's the case, I'll try and hold and trail up. I don't really get out on limit order, take profits. I usually just trail my stop up. Kind of crazy to think that it literally just one tick me in here and then now it's selling off. That's not ideal. That's always hard to watch if it does happen like that. But in terms of a 5-minute, NASDAQ's kind of made a double bottom here. Pretty much my stops below this on the NASDAQ. The ES could be doing this. So just kind of got to sit here and wait. We had a trade like this, I think, last week where it just took a while for things to get going. It was sloppy. It wasn't fun to hold through. Would I add another contract if it broke higher again? No. I think at this point, because just because it breaks higher, to me, I don't necessarily think that can, you know, I think that really helps the trade look good. But I don't think I want to size into this trade with the idea that because it's already been kind of choppy, I don't think it's going to be an easy trade to the upside. You know, I think most likely it could be like this. You know, maybe it gets going, you know, it could chop for a while and then eventually get going. That's usually how situations like this play out. We kind of had that happen last week with a trade like this where it chopped around, I think, for at least 30 minutes, slowly grinded higher, and then kind of rocketed up to, you know, finish this last move. And if that's the case, you know, I don't want to size in because I think it's just going to be difficult. I would rather increase my size when I'm very confident in what the market's doing. And I think the move is going to be easy to manage. There was a lot of people that I think on that trade last week that stayed or they trailed their stop up too early. Swing stopped them out, and then it went. And so keeping a smaller size makes it easier for me emotionally to deal with pullbacks like this. NASDAQ is, I think this downtrend is pretty clearly broken on the NASDAQ now. So just kind of waiting. Do I trade live every day? I do. I do this every day. I am trading the futures markets, so this doesn't technically have a certain amount of leverage you're using. It's more of the asset is leveraged normally. To get control of this contract, I pretty much just needed $500 in my account. Probably more like 1,000 to be safe for pullbacks, but the leverage is insanely high when it comes to futures. And so in terms of trailing up, once this kind of gets going, like if it jumps up to here, I'll definitely start trailing my stop up. I think just below the swings though, I don't want to, I want to let it kind of do its thing, right? I want to see what the pullbacks look like, what it does. I'm going to remove this just to keep things a little cleaner. NASDAQ looks good. Nice looking move on a 5-minute. You know, again, realizing that, okay, this fair value gap right here is the first target, this high. And so as we come up to here, knowing that, well, we could just pop here and sell off. And because I'm getting so late in the move, I won't be able to capture that much. And if that's the case, you know, I would still rather capture what I am able to capture and get out. You know, this trade wasn't necessarily about making a ton of money. This was more about executing based on the read I saw and still taking a trade in kind of this market when I saw the opportunity, but managing my risk properly. And so I think definitely if we kind of pump up to here, let's say right here, this low, I think if we touch this, I'm going to move my stop to here. If we start to push all the way up here, I'll move my stop to break even. But ideally, I would like to have a mental trailing stop until this has a pullback. Because this is starting to get going in a good way, I think the door is open to continue higher, right? On a 5-minute, punching all the way up here, I think is totally possible in this market. And in hindsight now, of course, I would love to be full size on this, but don't let that eat you up. I don't think I wouldn't have got in on this trade if I was trying to do full size, and so you got to remember that too. So we just hit here. I'm gonna move my stop up to here. I think if we come all the way down here, it's definitely over. I think most likely we would pull back here before we continued higher. Maybe we would do a double top before continuing lower, and so I'd have time to still move to break even. NASDAQ still looks good. The NASDAQ is just trying to look at the NASDAQ as well for potential spots, because that might help slow the market. And this is a strong move here. This is how I like to use the fair value gaps, is I think they're a magnet. You see once it gets going, it can just rip this fair value gap, an unhealthy move back very, very quickly. But keep in mind, it could just do this very quickly. The market, this is a funky move out of nowhere, like a very fast-paced move out of nowhere. I think it's a good signal that we could pull back and continue higher. So I'm going to have to hold through a pullback like this. That's why I don't want to move my stop yet, because this is an unhealthy move to the upside. I'm assuming and expecting a pullback to happen here. And so I want to be prepared to hold through that. How much of a pullback remains to be seen. Sometimes I like to try and just let it do its thing. If it pulls back here and then starts to bounce, I'll move my stop. And then if it knocks me out, that's fine. I captured as much move as possible. I'm not trying to just look for this. I'm trying to leave the door open for this. But this market's been very back and forth. So I want to, not get greedy here and think that this is just going to go to the moon. But also trying to think about big picture, not get biased in either direction. And on a 5-minute, this is a solid bounce. Now 5-minute on, you could say this could do a head and shoulders here, and if it does, it's gonna have to pull back here to my entry. Do I want to hold through that? Probably not. Same thing with ES. It could totally do that. Hopefully, it just does a pullback here, retests this area, and pops up. I think that's totally reasonable. In terms of a stair-stepping pattern, it totally could come and test this little area before the breakout here. And because If I was in full size, I would probably be trailing up my trade a little tighter here. But with these trades, I'm not trying to get in as fast of a move as I normally do. I'm trying to look for the big picture play here. That's why my stop's wider, my size is smaller, because I think the big picture play here is that we move to the upside. And so I want to be able to hold through some pullbacks. And I think if this punches up here though, after this little pullback, I might move my stop below this. But we'll see. Fibonacci retracement levels, I definitely use them. But usually I just use the 50%. And so like how I would use it is this level to this level, I would look at the 50% move. And that was down here. I don't look at the 6 whatever, the 7, 8 whatever. I haven't used those in a while, so I forgot what the actual numbers are. But I try and just keep it simple and look at the 50%. NASDAQ's right here, minor resistance level. That's where I would assume a fast move like this is going to struggle a little bit. But we might come here, test this, and then continue the uptrend, right? The whole idea of this reversal strategy is I'm spotting the bigger picture reversal. If it kind of double tops here, again, I'm looking to hold through a pullback. If it double tops and just rips lower, that's a possibility, and I'll just get out at either a small loss or break even or a small win. But I don't want to let a micro move knock me out. I want to be able to look to see this test this area and potentially continue higher from here. About my checklist, how do I tell if a move is unhealthy or not? Simplest way is a fair value gap indicator on a 5-minute. If we swap to a 5-minute, you can see we had this red one indicated that this move down was unhealthy. And so we slowed down here and ripped this unhealthy move back up. And so you can see it here on a 1-minute chart too. Here's the unhealthy move, just big candlesticks shooting straight down. NASDAQ didn't do it as much. NASDAQ looks good here too. I mean, it's just kind of a bull flag maybe. That would be great. To me, there's nothing telling me to get out yet. It's just, if I want to get out here, it's just my emotions being nervous about, the future outcome. Really late entry? Yeah. To me, it was too much of a gamble to jump in early. And I'm okay accepting that I'm not going to get as much profit and risk reward on this move. And so I'll adjust how I enter and get out based on that. I'm not looking to hold until 2 or 3x. I'm being aware that we're at a spot where we could sell off, reverse a little, and find some resistance as we move up, if we're going to continue to move up. I don't really use the 30-minute orb or any other strategies. What I pretty much do is just look for these reversals in the morning. Why don't I take $300 in profit? It's not enough. It's not what I'm looking for. That's focusing too much on the money. To you, a $300 trade might be really big. To me, bluntly, it's not. My full size is risking $1,500 per trade. And so you don't want to be thinking about the money. You want to be thinking about the risk reward ratio, because you're going to increase your size over time, right? And if you get too focused on the money, it's gonna mess with you mentally, and you're gonna get greedy or scared. And so, I started at risking $50, and a $300 trade was huge. Hitting a $300 trade, I would be jumping up and down. I'd be singing, my favorite song as I went for a walk with my dogs. My whole day would be amazing, right? Um, but that's just the process, right? Everyone starts small and they slowly scale up over time. But because of that, I also have to be able to deal with larger losses. And so that's where you want to actually be focused on. Is yesterday I took a full size loss at like $1,500. And it stung a little, obviously, but it didn't fuck me up for the rest of the week. I was able to reset, come in today, and focus on making the correct decisions for trading. And that's what you have to be able to do every single day. Just to read into oil a little bit here, even though I don't think it'll really do anything. On a 5-minute, oil looks like it could be doing a little double top here. And I think if it rips this fair value gap, that definitely puts upwards pressure on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ here. This is a very nice pullback if that's all it's going to do to me. Mentally, this was not that hard to hold through. NASDAQ looks the same. You can see, actually, I was talking about how it might come and retest this previous high here. Pretty much just did a little test. And then up we go. If we break here, I'll move to break even. Sorry guys if I'm missing questions. I'm trying to look, but while I'm in a trade, I don't want to get too distracted. I do live trade every day. So if I miss your questions, come back tomorrow and I will answer them. A lot of the beginning questions about how futures work, how my strategy works, go check out my YouTube channel. That's mainly what I've done before. So I have very good polished YouTube channel videos and educational, explanations that walk through a lot of this. Just looking at a 5-minute here. Actually, let's look at a 15-minute. I haven't seen what that looks like. Oh, that's a daily. I mean, a 15-minute looks solid. To me, this is like, it still could do, I could see this being a head and shoulders, so we could get a pullback here before this continues higher, but this is a nice bottoming pattern. It technically hasn't made, it's still making a lower low and a lower high. It hasn't made a new high yet. But this is such a strong spike lower and reversal. This could definitely get going, especially just in this market and how this market is working. Same thing on the NASDAQ on a 15-minute. Haven't quite made a new high here to where I want to move my stop up. The NASDAQ has made a new high. If we make a little double top here and rip, that'll be sad. But again, like I don't want to read into every little. That's a hard thing about managing, is trying to, especially on a 1-minute, is in a slow market like this, is reading into every little move. Because you could read into this and it totally is a decent read, a double top right here, and we start to sell off and break lower and give, this unhealthy move all the way back. Same with the NASDAQ is a little bit more bullish here now, I think. But that could happen, on a 5-minute, there is a little unhealthy move here. But that's why why I like to be focusing on the big picture to kind of guide you in the correct direction. Because otherwise, if I used to do this a ton, reading into the micro movements can distract you in a big way. If you open one contract and you're only making $40, if you're opening a micro futures contract, which would be, the ticker would be MES, that's a tenth of the size. I'm trading the ES, which is much larger. So this is kind of a crappy pullback to hold through, but because the NASDAQ here, I think, is coming to this area, I want to give it a little wiggle room. I want to see it. I totally think it could come and test this previous high. It could literally come here, test, and go higher. And so I am okay giving it a little bit of wiggle room. I would love to move up to break even and take risk completely off the table. But I knew getting into this that this would be more of a bigger picture play. And that's why I'm smaller size. And I think here on a 5-minute, a pullback to here before it continues higher would totally complete this head and shoulders and is totally a reasonable move. And if it just shoots down like this, I will tighten up my stop most likely if it has a little pullback here and continues. And so that's kind of how I'm going to look at this. Because I could totally see it hitting here and bouncing. We're still technically, this uptrend line here is technically still in play. NASDAQ could just be making a little whip here before the bigger picture trend continues. And hindsight could be I should have got out at that double top, but I'm not going to do that. The MES does follow the same market. It's the exact same thing. If you pull up the MES, it'll look the exact same. It's just a smaller sized asset to allow you to trade smaller size. I'd like to see it hold this support zone right here. I'm okay letting it spike a little bit. It's not fun, but I want to be methodical and stick to the read versus stick to, oh, I was up money and now I'm break even, and that's frustrating. Ten micros, or 10 micros is 1 mini. They're a tenth of the size. And if I was long all the way from down here, if I got in more aggressively and I was full size, I definitely would have had my stop here and got out at this double top. Because to me, I would have already captured a large amount of the move. I think this move right here is the easy money. And after this, I think it's going to be less likely that we go up or down. To me, the fair value gap edge from here is over. And now I'm looking for the bigger picture play. And so that's why I'm smaller size, because I'm not looking for that quick fair value gap move. To me, on this trade, that's just the initiation and the start of the move. To me, that initiated this uptrend, and now I'm looking for this uptrend to continue. But as this pulls back here, I will most likely move my stop below this swing. Same thing on the NASDAQ. It just come here, spiked a little bit. I'm going to give it a little bit more room, see if it spikes up and continues higher. And if it's just going to continue lower, I'll just get out. That's where reading into the candlesticks and seeing, okay, it's likely that it comes down here, retests this high. That's a healthy move in an uptrend. A healthy uptrend is going to have pullbacks. And so I need to be able to hold through those. And I like to be able to look, based on what I'm seeing, okay, where could that pullback be? Because this move happened so quickly, this was a little bit more difficult of a pullback to hold through. But if it just kept like it was doing, it would probably be like this. And in the end, it still gets to the same spot. But being able to read that and predict potentially what could happen really helps. And so I'm going to move my stop up below this swing, because to me that's a good enough pullback that if it's going to continue higher now, it's going to, and if it continues lower, it'll break this low. Like it might do this and continue higher. This is a healthy pullback to me. I think now we continue higher if the trend's going to continue higher. Just doing a little stretching while I wait for this to play out. If we look at a 5-minute, probably starting to form that head and shoulders on a 5-minute. Definitely pulled back to this left shoulder here and tested that. I was looking at this micro level here, but also really it's testing this area. It came back and tested that area over here. $60-minute fair value gap. I don't really look at that. To me, 60 minutes is kind of too big a time frame. Most likely to me, because I'm trading on so much a 1 minute, 15-minute chart is still 15 times larger, right? Or slower in terms of how the candlesticks play out. 60 is just kind of huge. And to me, a 15-minute chart zoomed out, I can still kind of see the big picture of what's going on. Where did my... Here we go. And if we come up here and test this and sell off, I'm fine getting out. Because to me, it's starting to slow down. There's still this could be still in play here. Again, this is why I'm smaller size, because I don't think this uptrend is going to be easy. And so it helps me reduce my risk. If this trade just plays out break even, I'm okay with that. I'm happy how I entered, happy how I read. It allows me to be a little more engaged in what the market's doing. So then I can be a little more aware of how it works, how it plays out, how I manage it. And then when I see a good opportunity, I can size up, and that's where I make my money. I'm out of my morning drink though. I gotta switch to water. That's a bummer. Can I show where this is? So on the 5-minute is where the fair value gap was. You can kind of see its fair value gaps all over the place. I don't drink coffee, actually. I drink tea. Just like beer, I don't like the taste of coffee. I'm actually okay with coffee ice cream, but not super strong. What if it chops near my entry all day? So be it, then I'm happy to get out of break even. If it's just going to turn into a choppy market, I don't want to be in it, right? Like the idea here is based on my management. I'm in as long as the trend continues upwards in a methodical, healthy way. If it continues this uptrend along this trend line, great, I'm staying in. But if it starts to break and, of course, there's always the chance it hits this and just reverses. But the majority of the time, if it's going to break this, it's either going to continue start down and I want to get out and reduce my risk, or it's just going to do this. And it's not going to be an easy trade to be in. We're just kind of essentially in this little bull wedge here. NASDAQ looks the exact same. And hopefully that means that we're going to push higher. But in this market, we could go anywhere. This is the NinjaTrader desktop platform. NinjaTrader is what I use. There's a link for it in the description. There's also what's happening right now is the limited time demo trading tournament NinjaTrader has, where the prize pool is literally real money. There's a link for that in the description too, and in the chat. Let's not have my password and username exposed. I actually think that's the wrong one for anyone actually looking. But it's 250K prize pool of real money. You literally demo trade. And that's literally all you do is you demo trade. Whoever makes the most money demo trading in this tournament literally makes real money. There's qualifiers where first place gets 5,000. The prize pool for the whole qualifier is 20,000. And then you move on to the final round, the people who do the best, then go on to the grand prize that has $190,000 prize pool. And first place literally gets $100,000. And this is all for free to enter for new or existing NinjaTrader users. So it's a kind of crazy. I don't think I've ever seen these anywhere else. I think prop firms will do them, but you have to pay a fee. But this is literally free to enter. It's literally just an email. So there's a link for that below. And it's filling up fast. This next one is already 70%, 74% full. And one of them already filled up. So that's definitely a cool way to, if you're demo trading, just kind of test things out a little bit more. I don't really trade anything else other than the S&P 500 futures and the NASDAQ. For people asking if I trade other things. My take profit is, I would like to see us get to, if we zoom out to a 5-minute, I would love to see us come up to here somewhere. I will most likely get out with a trailing stop though. That's how I usually manage my trades. I like to just stay with the trend as long as it moves in my favor in a healthy way that I can understand. And if right now that's this trend line. If it starts to accelerate and go like this, I will trail up my stop a lot quicker because a pullback, this is a great example right here. We had a big move up. A pullback was pretty hefty. And if I'm getting close to my profit target, I don't want to hold through this to maybe get a tiny bit more, right? At that point, you just say, okay, it's good enough. I'm going to get out because I don't want to hold through this and it likely having to pull back. So that's how I really manage things. And this looks like it's just slowly grinding higher. NASDAQ actually, it's just breaking out. And I'm not really going to move I want to see what this move looks like. Do we just start to do this? Do we accelerate? I could totally see us accelerating again. And if we do, knowing that, okay, coming up here is, the highs are up here where the main, I think, resistance zone is. But we chopped around here pretty good too. So I could see us slowing down up here somewhere. It really just depends what this breakout starts to look like if it happens. How many points? I keep trying to drink my empty glass. Nothing's in there. How many points would I recommend for a beginner? I don't look at points. I look at risking a certain target amount of money per trade and then adjusting that based on the market volatility, because the market volatility changes. And so I like to have my stops based on price action. I want to put it below like a swing low, because to me, the trade's not invalidated until it necessarily breaks that area. And so if you have a certain amount of points instead, that doesn't adjust to different market volatilities. So that's why I target a certain amount of risk. But I think on NinjaTrader for the MES futures, you can probably risk about as little as $20. Like if I actually swap over, I don't think my stop here is too wide, I think, to be able to risk $20. But if I swap to the MES and use my little tool here, I think I got in pretty much right here. Where was it? It was pretty much right here. I got in with my stop down here. And if I change this, let's say to $50, I think the stop is too wide. But even with this super wide stop, $60. But even here, like this could be a normal stop size for a little more of aggressive entry. 2 contracts, you could be risking $40 per trade. Volatility is kind of high right now, which is why it's harder to risk a smaller amount, like as small as possible. But in the past, like with a normal move, yeah, you could get $15 risk per trade. Kind of what I was looking at earlier. Pretty gorgeous head and shoulders here. I think that definitely opens the door to this if we kind of get moving. NASDAQ on a 5-minute didn't micro pullback here. But the NASDAQ actually it's pretty much testing this zone. And then, after that, we'll just see what happens. Am I married already? Yes, I am. Sadly, I'm taken. You're new to the live stream, welcome. This is something I do every day. Been doing it for a month now. Don't plan on stopping. I execute this exact strategy every day. Obviously, there's variations, but pretty much I look for a reversal trade on the S&P 500 futures or the NASDAQ futures. And if you are new after this and you want to learn more, I highly recommend going to my YouTube channel, because you'll be able to scroll down and there's a playlist right here, learn my strategy. It'll walk through, this video is how I draw my zones. This video is kind of talking about futures and getting started. This one goes very in depth to how actual futures work, because there's a couple things that don't make sense right away. And then scroll down a little bit more, you got a tutorial on my trading platform and how to get that set up. And that would be a great way to kind of study up, so you can come in tomorrow, rest of the live streams, and kind of know what's going on. 3K people here? Yeah, that's crazy. Pretty crazy to have that many people watching, especially with, I think, weeks ago, maybe a month ago, it was at 1,500. So I really appreciate everyone being here. That's really crazy. And I'm happy that you guys are finding so much value from me walking through all this. That's my goal here, is to try and just show you guys real time what it's like, because obviously hindsight is way easier than doing this on than in real time. And the market is different every single day. So just looking at this, it's hard with this spike up. I don't really have a great, in terms of a healthy move, actually to draw a trend line on the NASDAQ here too. I mean, this could pull back down to here. It would really be nice if this got going a little bit more, just for my sanity. But as long as we are holding this uptrend, you know, I would expect this to kind of give us a little resistance, right? We're poking it, we're going to sell off a little. And then the thought is if the uptrend is going to continue, we're just going to have a little pullback and continue higher, right? The 5-minute is looking gorgeous. I don't want to get stopped out by a micro pullback in this solid looking uptrend. 15-minute chart here on the NASDAQ has actually made a new high. The first signal there that we're in an uptrend on a 15-minute. The S&P 500 hasn't necessarily done that yet. But that's why I think we're kind of running into a little resistance here. And potentially once that gets going, the idea is hopefully we kind of start to accelerate. And if we start to accelerate here, you know, start to do this a little, I'll just trail my stop up and get out whenever that acceleration ends. If this breaks here, I would move my stop up more. Like if we broke this, had a little pullback, I'd move my stop here. I'm not letting the thing come all the way down to, I'll just move this to break even now, just for kicks. But that's kind of, you know, how I'm looking to manage this. Not using my strategy, but mental side is super helpful. Honestly, I think that's the best way to go. Like even there's a ton of people that use variations of my strategy, or you know, we're all different, right? Like how you want to approach things, you have your own personality. But you know, if me just talking about the mental side is super helpful and allows you to stay disciplined, um, I think that's awesome. That you know, because I don't expect people to just be I wouldn't want people to be necessarily just trying to copy me. You know, the whole idea is I don't think copy trading you really learn that much. You might think you learn some, and you do definitely learn some, but like it's not as much as making the decision yourself. Because if you're copying someone, you're putting the responsibility on them. And so if it's wrong, you don't blame yourself, you blame them. And if it's right, I'm not trying to, I haven't really thought about it that much, but it doesn't allow you to regulate your emotions and learn how to deal with them and become self-sufficient, which is really what you want in the long term. Because who knows how long I'm going to do this? Who knows, you know, if it even works, if you know what I mean. What's my win rate over last month? I think it's like 50-50. This month has been very, very tricky, to be honest. And I've definitely been learning a lot this month in terms of having wider stops in certain spots, which I think has been really good. And I would say, you know, it's like P&L wise, I'm not up as much as I would like, but obviously 1 month is not a big deal. Like this market with the Middle East news, the last 2 months has just been so difficult. I hear so many people not really knowing what to do and struggling. And I think this market right now has just been very, very difficult. Um, and that's how trading is sometimes. Sometimes it's literally just about surviving. You know, if you that's why you don't want to do huge size sometimes, because if you blow your account up, it's like you don't have money to restart, you're gone. Half of trading when you're beginning is literally just staying alive and not blowing your account. Gain some nice momentum here. NASDAQ's cruising. If I was in the NASDAQ, I would have jumped in here. Would have been close to 2x. I really struggle with which to get in sometimes, especially when it's like the ES actually looked more bullish versus the NASDAQ was all the way down here looking more bearish. And then the recovery on the NASDAQ is actually stronger right now. That's why I try not to beat myself up too much about which one to trade, because you're just going to beat yourself up. Why not both? Just overcomplicate things. You could say, oh, I could do halves. If I want to do full size, I could do half on each. I've never really thought about that. But managing both at the same time, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be that hard. You could have them both on the screen. I could make the window half size. I don't know. I actually never thought about that. Just to then you wouldn't even have to think about it. To me, it looks like we're starting in a we're at least in this tighter uptrend now. We could pull back to here. Again, my stop isn't all the way down here or break even. I'm just leaving it there and waiting for what makes sense to move it up. I might move it up here, but I think at this point we're starting to get to a point. If this starts to accelerate, I'll just start trailing up and get out. As we're kind of, because the ES might kind of start to slow down up here. I'm actually going to pull that across. Actually, I do want to look at this little area too. Just mark this low right here. Let's see, where's the NASDAQ on that too? Just kind of the previous low of where it started this downtrend. That's pretty much right here. We're pretty much testing that right now. And on the NASDAQ, there's actually this 5-minute downtrend. I think this is broken by now. Because, I mean, we had this huge move. I think it's just it would have a little bit of a pullback. Again, it's a minor resistance zone that I would think would get broken. So these are just minor spots as we go on the way up that I want to be aware of. To me here, you know, we broke up, pulled back, bounced off of this. That was healthy. I think now same thing here. Pushed up. I want to see if we come and just test this. The previous micro high, because to me that's kind of a healthy move in the uptrend as it just stair steps higher. Getting nervous, I might pull back. Yeah, I mean, I think it's as it gets mentally, as it gets closer to your profit target and as you get more in profit, I totally, like, I get that too, in terms of the nervousness increases. Because you're getting close to your profit target. You've waited. You know, I've been in this trade for an hour almost, and I don't want it to. I would really like to get out at 1x or higher, right? If it just rips lower and I just get out at break even or half, you know, I could have got out over here, you know, in 10 minutes. And so you start to think about that stuff, right? And you want, that's your emotions talking, right? You don't want that to control you. You can feel it, you can, you know, respect it and know it's there, acknowledge it, and then just move on, you know. Go back to thinking about, okay, what are the charts telling me? And big picture, I mean, on a 15-minute, we've pretty much given this move back up. This move here, I would say we're pretty much there. And so I think that is a signal to where this could reverse, is we've given this move. But I want to give it a little bit of wiggle room, because if we look over here to the left, we had a move down yesterday, and as soon as it touched this, it had a little pullback, but then kept going. And, you know, it did have a longer pullback before it kept going higher. The idea is this is a minor resistance spot where it could start to level off. But the micro trend isn't done to where I think we could have a spike higher. And so if we just have a little pullback here and punch up here before we start to slow down, I want to try and hold that. I'm not, to me, in my eyes, I'm not risking a crazy amount. I think I'd probably, if we start to pull back, I'll get stopped out somewhere here. I'll let it kind of test this level. See if it bounces like this, and I'll move my stop here. And if it, comes down here instead, I'll get out. And I've, let the move go as far as I could. And that's all you can really look for. Of course, I would love to try and catch as much as possible and min-max things in terms of sometimes hindsight gain out at a limit order is better. But to me, getting out at a trailing stop when the market is telling me the move is slowing down and over, that to me is better. I like trading based on what the market is telling me. And this trend line has not let us down yet. How do you get my wonderful indicators? I don't think I've heard anyone call them that. They are actually, they might not be in the link in the description. I might be goofing up on that one. Yep. I think my auto description doesn't have them in there. I will link. Here's the link to get if you want to check out my indicators. Pretty much the biggest one is this risk reward tool. They're only for NinjaTrader desktop, but I think they're extremely, and this click trader one. This allows me to just get in based on a hotkey, and click on the chart. But those are kind of the main two that are extremely powerful. I don't think I've seen a risk reward tool like this anywhere else. There's actually, I think today, I've updated the risk reward tool recently. And so later today, I will most likely send out an email to everyone who has it, and you'll be able to download the new one. It's just a minor change. It's not anything crazy. It just kind of basically moves these contracts to here. Some people were using it for scalping, and when it was really small, it wasn't really readable. So not really a huge change. NASDAQ still looks bullish. Nothing really to do other than just wait and see what happens. Could look into this and read into this as it's a little micro lower high. But again, I'm not going to get out based on that until it starts to show me a little bit more. Because the NASDAQ is, we could just do this for a minute. I don't want to let this scare me out if there's another move, right? If we're just going to sideways and then move up again. We could totally just do that. Sideways, move up, sideways, move up again. And then if we move up one more time, I'd probably start to scale out a little bit. And if we break this downtrend and test here, I'll move my stop up below if this bounces, hopefully, and then I'll just get out. And remembering that I got in way later in the move. The move was already 50% of the way to here, and so because of that, I'm not going to get as much profit and risk reward. And that's okay on this trade. To me, I'm just happy that I saw the opportunity. I jumped in based on risk management wise, what I thought made sense based on my read, and was able to execute and capture some of the move. Not every day is going to be a 3x full size trade. Those actually don't happen very often. NASDAQ here, just looking to see if it bounces here. I'm watching both of these. If they're going to break this uptrend, and I want to give it time to retest this level, just because it's broken it right now, I'm not going to get out. I think giving it a little bit more wiggle room to test this support zone, I think is smart. Because this is kind of a clean support right here. NASDAQ, that would mean it would come all the way down here. That's kind of a deep pullback, but it could just, in reality, be retesting this high right here and this little pullback. Little head and shoulders. Yeah, there could be a little head and shoulders, but again, I'm not trying to read into the micro patterns because I think the big picture 5 minute is pretty strong. I definitely think we're at a decision point of, is it going to pull back or continue higher? And it could pull back here and then continue higher. You know, it could be making it could do this on a 5 minute, but I'm not going to hold through that kind of pullback on a 5 minute. That's too much. And also, this trend might not be broken yet. I could adjust it to here. I mean, that to me still looks clean. Like, to me, it's still holding this uptrend. That's why I don't like to use micro breakouts of trend lines, because I think of them just like reversal zones, right? This is an area that has been holding, this trend line area is basically holding the market up. And so anytime it comes into that area, it's going to bounce. And then you got to remember always that, like, you might be drawing it slightly different. And if you adjust it a little bit, it actually still says that it hasn't broken that yet. And so that's why trend lines are very subjective. Holding in trades like this, though, is hard. This long, you know, being in a trade this long is hard because your decision fatigue, even if you're not really doing that much, you're constantly analyzing. Your decision fatigue gets weaker and weaker over time. That's why I don't trade very long. I would be done trading by now if I wasn't in a trade. But because I'm in a trade, I'm going to stay in until, you know, I obviously close out. But usually, a lot of the times, I would only be taking trades where I'm in it 15 to 30 minutes at the most. Sometimes it would be 10 minutes. And so learning to hold a trade an hour like that, that's just another thing you got to learn. And everything in trading, just practice gets you better. You're not going to be perfect right away. You just want to focus on getting better slowly over time and just continuously practicing and knowing that, try not to be outcome focused, because even if you're losing money consistently right now, that does not mean you're not learning and getting better. That's the hard part about trading is, you could be consistently learning over time, but your profit graph could be going down right now. And then eventually, once you kind of hit, forgetting the word, but like once you get a spot to where you now have enough knowledge, you will all of a sudden start to break even and then start to make money. But you could just be, your learning curve could just be continuously going up. But you don't tangibly see a P&L increase as you're continuously learning, because you got to hit that inflection point where you can actually start to consistently make money. And that's a really hard part about trading. And why you don't want to get super discouraged when you go on loss streaks and have difficult times, because that's a part of the process. Should I add other things to my checklist? I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about having like a little secondary checklist of like big picture, or I could just add in there like number one really is the trend in place? Like are the markets aligned? That's because I think there's been one or two trades that have checked everything on the box, and I haven't done anything because the big picture play hasn't been there. Thought process behind this trade. Yeah, so to quickly run through it, for people that didn't see the start, is big picture. Right? If I scroll back a little here to cut away those, is we were down here. We had two big spikes lower, fair value gaps, unhealthy move. So to me, if the market's going to reverse, these fair value gaps and unhealthy move make it very likely to whip back up. Overall, I would say the market is pretty bullish right now. Granted, yesterday we had a crazy sell-off, but it did eventually reverse. And so my thought is, and actually looking at this now, we kind of came in and tested this area. That was the bottom. And so, I was looking for kind of a potential bottom this morning. NASDAQ looked pretty much the same, big sell-off, came to support, came to a previous support zone here. And then from there, it was looking at this kind of bottom. It kind of set up a nice head and shoulders here. I'm not going to get too much into the specifics of exactly entering. I would recommend going back and looking at that because it was a little funky in here. But I had to wait I got in late because I had to wait for the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ was looking bearish for a while here. It looked like it was actually going to make a low. And so to me, I didn't want to enter in here because it was too much of a gamble. It looked to me that the market could spike lower all of a sudden. And so I didn't want to enter in on that until there was a little bit more confirmation. But because of that, I got in, middle of the range, understanding that a lot of the move up has already happened. So I went smaller size. I'm half size right now. And then my risk reward, I had a pretty wide stop as well. And then from there, it's just been assuming that things are going to be kind of slow, grind higher. And I'm just trying to hold that. And so I'm actually going to move my stop up here because I think this is a solid pullback. I think if we pull back here, I'm happy to jump out there. But, here it looks like we had a spike. I think we're going into a sideways chop where assuming if we break higher, we'll, make another move higher. And then target-wise is I'm looking at, okay, I think somewhere up here we'll start to slow down. It would be great if we went to all-time highs, obviously. But at this point, I'm just trailing with this uptrend line because this uptrend line has not let us down yet. And I've also just been kind of looking at previous swing highs. It's kind of doing this stair-step pattern where it hits a high, comes back and tests it, and then makes a new high. Pretty standard uptrend stuff. So that's kind of where we're at. How do I determine if the fair value gap is unhealthy? Pretty much, I would say all fair value gaps are unhealthy. The question is it going to retrace it, or is that a very strong move and it's just going to continue once it has a minor pullback? And so that's why I didn't jump in right away, because to me, we had a lot of strength down. I thought, well, we had to move down here. Maybe we'll come back, have a pullback, healthy pullback, and continue and make a new low. Because, it did that exactly right here. Went down, pulled back, and made a new low. And so this market's been very tricky right now with deciphering where and when the signals actually happen. Are my indicators available for NinjaTrader Web? Sadly, they're not. They just don't allow custom drawing tools. I think though the NinjaTrader Web does, same with Tradeovate, they're the same thing. It does allow basically mouse clicking trade entries, which is nice. Do I live stream every day? Yes, I do. I pretty much do this every single day. NASDAQ, we could be topping out here. I think we'll just wait and see. I do use the desktop app for NinjaTrader. I think it's way more powerful. I have custom indicators that only work on it, sadly, but that's just kind of how, it just allows more customization. And so those indicators I can get created for it. Put something on my screen that says, yes, I live stream every day. Yeah, but then I would have the whole screen would just be random FAQs. And I would rather keep it very clean for people. And it's okay answering the common questions. Looks like it might be topping out here. How much do I charge for the indicator? I think it depends. You can buy them all, like lifetime access for, I think it's like 150. Or you can, I'll put a link in the chat if you want to check them out. Otherwise, you can just do like a monthly subscription for each one is like $5 if you just do one. NASDAQ actually made a new low here. So we could be getting, and this is a clean trend break. This trend is definitely broken on the NASDAQ. I'm seeing here, does the ES maybe hold? But otherwise, definitely might be looking to get out here. But I also think because this trend, the trend could be broken, but we could just go into sideways range here, barely make a new low and push up. Definitely going to see how this plays out. The bar time indicator I use, it's another custom one I've made. It literally just puts the timer right next to the bar, which otherwise you can have, the normal NinjaTrader one just comes down here in the corner. It's literally just a tiny quality of life upgrade that I like having. It's really nice to be able to just have that number right there. It's not, none of these things, other than I would say the risk reward tool, are really necessary. They're just quality of life upgrades. NASDAQ spiking lower. I don't really see a reason to move my stop up more. I'm okay getting stopped out here because I think price action wise, that makes sense. NASDAQ is having a little bit deeper of a pullback. And if it's just going to have a deep pullback here and then recover, I'm okay with that. I think we could sell off, but we could also have just a pullback, make a new high. I'd probably move my stop up here. The ES hasn't really broken the trend line. And so this is parts where sometimes the NASDAQ you know, it gave more to the upside, but also it whipped faster and I would have been stopped out. Um, and so that's where it's like, you know, trading, deciding which market to trade is kind of hard. If this makes a new high on the ES and this trend, I'll move my stop up. Not a bad spot to move it after this pretty bullish candlestick too. I'll just kind of see how this plays out. I guess I don't really need this on my chart anymore. Just looking at a 5 minute, I mean, 5 minutes just slowly chugging higher. There's really nothing to read in here. 5 minute on the NASDAQ, healthy pullback. You know, we have come up to this trend line and we're struggling to break through it. But this could totally just be a spike flush lower before it continues. And so I think still going to wait till this makes a new high before I move my stop up. You know, it's sometimes agonizing being in a trade this long, but hey, you know what? If I'm in a trade long that a long time, that most likely means I'm just making more money. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt that it's annoying being in a slow uptrend. If you're new to NinjaTrader and I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel I would go check out. I think I'll probably move my stop up here. Because if this is gonna just make a little attempt here and sell off, NASDAQ's making a lower high. Just going to see how this candlestick plays out a little bit. If it's just going to spike and then recover. But it's definitely looking like we're starting to slow down. But again, I want to try and be patient with the idea that, hey, we're just in this upper range right now. Big picture, it's still kind of bullish. I don't want to read into these micro pullbacks too much. You know, it's kind of just getting a little choppy at the highs here. This uptrend is kind of starting to break. That doesn't mean we won't stop going up. That just means that methodical indicator is kind of over and things might be a little more difficult to read. You know, just trying to zoom out and looking at it unbiased, it kind of looks like we're just in a bullish flag here. Like this, it looks like it's trying to break out here. It's technically making higher highs and higher lows here. Or just higher lows, sorry, as it just slowly chugs higher. And on the NASDAQ, looks like a pretty decent little double bottom here to go higher. What's the monthly cost for NinjaTrader? You can, if you're just gonna trade like the I think it's the CME group, like Nasdaq main indexes, Nasdaq, S&P 500. It's literally $4 for data. I don't think it's that cheap anywhere else. If you want everything, I think it's uh $12 a month. I think order flow and deeper level 2 stuff, just like everywhere else, costs more. But literally for me, I actually do have the $12 a month because I do look at gold and I think oil is technically on a different one sometimes. but really like you could get away with the $4 one very easily. Yes, it's just slowly grinding higher here. CME is free now. That means I'm paying money that I don't need to be. That's a bummer. But I think over time, like with commissions and as these brokerages just get more and more competitive, things just get cheaper and cheaper as time goes on. I think the biggest thing is trading less is where you're going to save your money. If you're trying to scalp and take 5 trades a day, commissions are going to gobble you up, no matter how low they are. Because this trade with one ES contract, let's see. If I pull up this NinjaTrader fee thing, I'm trading ES. I'm trading ES here. I technically have lifetime, and so their commissions are this, but there's also these fees. So lifetime is $2 to buy, and then to sell and close it'd be another $2. So it's basically $4.50 for me to take this trade. Which if I'm trading, risking $700 and maybe making 1,000, that's nothing. But if I would be scalping, trying to make $100, and I'm taking 5 trades a day, or let's say 10, that's $40. And granted, if you win all your trades, it doesn't matter. But like you're gonna have losses, you're gonna have break evens. That's where it starts to hurt. Interesting. The ES is actually moving up here, and the NASDAQ is struggling to make a new high. It still looks good. And so this is where, again, trading, choosing which one to trade, sometimes it'll work out better in your favor if you trade one versus the other. The NASDAQ we were already looking at was if I entered in down here, I would have been, this is what my risk reward would look like. 2x would be up here. I'd almost be there. And on the ES, I'm still kind of behind, but we're catching up now. So I try not to think about it too much and compare them too much because that's just mentally frustrating sometimes when you're on the wrong side of things. All that's hindsight, right? You want to try and not do hindsight kind of thinking. Hitting those 4 digits. Starting to accelerate. If we start to accelerate here, I'll probably get a little tired with my stop because big picture up here is we're getting near the highs. The all-time highs. And this is kind of the move I was looking for. Of, okay, we're going to come up here. If this move happens, great. I haven't moved my stop yet just because it's a mental stop. Really, like, I can move it here. Like, definitely. But honestly, like, if this pulls back, I'm probably going to, granted, stair-step pattern-wise, looking at this could break out and pull back and test this high and continue to go up. But again, if we get a breakout here, I'm going to start to trail up because we're starting to get to 2x, kind of my target. You want to always think about risk reward, right? Of as your trade is changing and you're moving your stop, your risk reward changes. Like if I was going to get out here, no matter what, as this starts to go up and my stop stays down here, my risk reward gets worse. Like if this is my target, I'm risking basically 1-to-1 right now, right? If it goes up here, I make $100, example, and if it comes and pulls back and stops me out, I lose that $100 I was up. And so that's why, you want to be thinking about it as things change. But why I don't want to get out at a limit is because the market's been making all-time highs haven't been a big resistance zone. But also thinking about today, this is a big move so far today. So even if the market has higher upside potential on a smaller time frame, we could have a pullback like this and continue higher. But that pullback to me is too far to hold. Granted, my stop's right here right now, but that's a mental stop again. How much on average do I risk per trade? My full size is like 1,500. So I'm like half size right now. Just because this market this week has been really funky. Yesterday, I technically did take a full size trade. Hindsight, I should not have. It should have been half size. But this week was it was very difficult. And so now I'm adjusting based on things changing. Is this my longest stream? Yeah, I think so. My dog's probably wondering what the heck is going on. We were supposed to have a walk an hour ago, but she hasn't come up to bug me yet, so she must be okay. I did say the word walk a little too loud though. So I would be surprised if she pops her head in here in like 10 seconds. But she knows the routine now, like dogs know routines, right? As soon as I come downstairs and I leave my office, she knows. When I enter, do I use a market order? Yes, I use a stop market order technically, because I like to get in as it breaks a high and it breaks momentum. Oil's been making a nice sell-off, which has definitely helped this trade. We had a big. I think I entered in pretty much here on the S&P 500, and oil's been selling off nicely. So that's definitely been helping push this up. But I would have got in either way. How do I enter my reversal zones? Big picture swings. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a video that walks in through it in more in depth. Anyone that's new to what I'm doing and is interested, go look at my YouTube channel. I have a ton of tutorials. Go and look at this, learn my strategy. It'll walk you through everything. Futures, how they work. There's a tutorial on my platform, how I have it set up. Patience is paying off today. NASDAQ just made a little new high here. Big picture on the NASDAQ. I mean, that's a nice 5-minute pullback. Basically just retesting this swing right here. And then pushing up. The ES, pretty similar. A little pullback, and now we're accelerating. All this stuff up here, I think, is pretty minor. These little spots right here, I would say, are minor resistance zones. I'm just going to draw that lines. Actually, I'll leave a little zone. Super minor little resistance zone. Starting to get a little accelerated here. And so as it gets accelerated towards the high, I do want to definitely think about trailing up a little tighter. I don't think I want to hold through this because as we get near the highs, a pullback like this could actually start this, right? Versus over here where we're in more middle of the range, and I think the big picture is to the upside, I'm okay holding through a larger pullback because I think there's more upside potential. But the upside potential is getting less and less, and so it's not worth it risk reward wise to hold through a large pullback. NASDAQ here, same thing. Broke the trend. NASDAQ clearly broke the trend, and a trend change indication can be when the trend changes, or sorry, when the trend's in an uptrend, it breaks, and then it makes one more exhaustive push higher, where it pushes a new high, gets overextended, and then it rips. We've seen this a lot recently. I think the last trade similar to like this, it did this. I trailed up, got stopped out, and I looked back later the next day and it just ripped from there. And I'm not going to take the short here. I'm just going to be done with trading for the day once I close this out. But that's the potential of why I want to trail up and get out. What time am I normally live? I do this every day I trade, generally 4 to 5 days a week. And I start 30 minutes before the US market opens, so 9 a.m. Eastern. If you go to my YouTube channel, I generally try and schedule the lives out for when I'm going to do them, so you can kind of check in and look. And so as we just go up here, I'm definitely going to just be trailing my stop up. I'm okay if it pulls back and I get knocked out on a micro pullback, because to me, it's getting a little overexcited. NASDAQ here, a little overexcited. I don't think I'm going to do a full previous candlestick trail and stop. I want to give it a little bit of a pullback. But I definitely am adjusting how I'm trailing up now. I'm just going to remove my risk reward tool there's too many lines on the chart. I like to have it clean. I'm trying to see if this little trend holds, if it has just a little pullback here and then moves up. I'm doing basically like a 2 candlestick trailing stop. NASDAQ could have a pullback to here and go up. I'm okay giving it one spike down of a candle and then seeing how it recovers. And I'm definitely risking more by letting it do that. But I'm okay giving a little bit with the idea that it could have a little bit more of a pop in it. What is my risk for this trade? I initially was risking, I think, just a little under $600, $700. So I'm kind of looking at NASDAQ on the other screen too. I'd like to see a little bit of a poke higher here, and then move my stop up here. Yeah, I think that's enough for me. I'm going to move my stop up here below this low. It's kind of made micro pullback here of, I think if it's just going to continue lower, I'm fine getting out here. Anyway, I could look at NVIDIA. Sorry, I don't really look at other markets. I don't really trade NVIDIA, so I don't really know how it moves. And I can't really give you a great analysis on it, so I apologize. Overall, NVIDIA, if you think about it, NVIDIA is probably going to follow the NASDAQ. I think this looks like a great bottom big picture in the NASDAQ. We might have a little bit of a pullback here, but I think big picture, the market still looks pretty good to the upside. This is the ES futures on a 1-minute chart. And I trailed up here because to me, the risk reward started to not get favorable for a pullback. I don't want to hold a pullback all the way down to here. I think big picture, if the trend pulls back here and bounces, it could totally continue higher. But to me and where the trade is and where I'm at with the day, I'm happy closing out here. To me, like the NASDAQ here, this looks like it wants to make one more leg that lower. It's starting to become difficult and so I'm okay jumping out. You know, we've got a majority of the move. Even if it comes up here, makes a little bit more, and then reverses, you don't want to get married to trying to catch the whole move and getting out exactly at the top. You want to be focused on getting the meat of the move. You know, you don't need to jump in at the lows. Like here, I jumped in way higher, way normally higher than I usually do. But you know, anywhere down here, you're capturing the meat of the move, and size is going to make you the money. And a little lower high there. I think this is going to stop me out. And I am totally happy with that trade. I'm going to try and not talk the rest of the day because I've been talking for I don't know how many hours straight now. My voice is starting to get a little sore. Okay, there it is. Out on the trade. Made pretty much 1,000. But again, not really focused on the money as much there. Focused on the fact that I think it was a great entry, looking for the big picture up. This is what I've been trying to do recently, is adjust to these more methodical swings the market's having. And I am, so that's why I'm doing smaller size with wider stop, because I'm getting used to it and adding it to my strategy. So that's it for the day. I'm definitely not trading the rest of the day. That's kind of what I look for every morning. You know, just a quick reversal in the morning. This one was obviously a little slower than normal, but yeah, I appreciate everyone being here. If you're new, definitely go check out my videos. I do this every single day. I'm generally live 15-30 minutes before the US stock market opens at 9 Eastern. And so I will see everyone tomorrow. This feels good after yesterday. Yesterday was frustrating taking that loss, but today, you know, I didn't let that emotion control me, right? I didn't let the fear of another loss essentially stop me from jumping in when I saw the signal. So I think that's really important to do, and hard to do. So that's all I got. Again, appreciate you guys being here. If I miss your questions, I will be here tomorrow.